I'm Luke. Yeah, that's that whole slide. I work at Prime, so I'm excited. I would love, so my students know that I love feedback. I would love feedback from the cohorts from other boot camps as well, so that I get an idea for how I'm doing here. If you've got any feedback, that would be terrific. Prime is a coding boot camp. We are in downtown Minneapolis, and we do a 20-week program, 6 weeks online, and then 14 weeks after that in class, where we try to teach a whole ton of things, including React. But I do want to preface this with, I am not a React expert yet. We're all getting better. So I want to lay that out there right away. I am not claiming to be some sort of React expert. I don't know everything about React. I checked my GitHub, and this simplified React Axios was my first commit to GitHub that had anything to do with React, and that was on October 19th, 2017, so 7 months ago. So I hope that I'm not, it's clear I'm not an expert, yes? Okay, maybe nodding too vigorously over here. Okay, good. So there's a lot of depth to React. We can talk about who, what, where, why, and how, but I have an hour, and now I have 47 minutes, so we are going to talk about what and how. So what is React? So React is a whole bunch of stuff, and we can get into cool things like components and state and props and virtual DOM, but tonight we are really just going to focus on components. So web components breaking our pages and our views down into smaller and smaller pieces. That's what we're going to focus on tonight. So for a lot of people who have seen React before, this is probably review, but I want to make it accessible to people who have maybe not seen React before, because at this point React has been out for a little while, and if you feel like, you know, I should probably know what React is, it's been out for a while, like I feel like I'm behind, like keep in mind I've only been doing this for 7 months, I feel like I've got a decent handle on it, but we're going to start really small and build up from there. So we're not going to talk about a state management or Redux or anything like that, we're going to talk about React components. So we're going to take a big step back and talk about those. So React components are essentially a way of looking at the web. And if I go ahead and pull up our meetup for tonight, this site is built, this meetup site is built in React. And I have an extension that shows me that. But essentially, this works kind of like HTML, where if we inspect it, we can see that we get smaller and smaller and smaller and more specific. So what we have are just components inside of components inside of components. So a component is one part of a website. That's what a component is. It's just one section. So this navbar is a component. This body is a component. This H1 is a component. And we can break it down farther and farther and farther. And that's one thing that makes it really great for large teams. If you're working on a whole bunch of different components, you're not stepping on each other's toes. You're writing in completely different files, and you're not interrupting what somebody else is working on. So that's what components are, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I also want to point out I don't make slideshows often, so I just accepted whatever the default template is there. So please don't judge me too harshly on this. So let's write code instead. So if you haven't already, try to create a React app. I'm going to go ahead and use one I already created because I was nervous about Wi-Fi. So this npm install-g create React app, this is what it's going to look like. If I open up my terminal. So this will work on a Mac or on a PC. I don't have anything against PCs. I'm not joining that flame war tonight. So it works just fine on either one. So it would look something like npm install-g create React app. Oh, is that big enough? Can people see that? No, not a chance. Please let me know if I'm just talking for my own benefit at any point. That's not going to do me a whole lot of good. I haven't inflated ego enough, so that'll be fine. So npm install-g create React app makes it global. It means you'll be able to create a React application anywhere on your computer. And create React app is something that was created by Facebook, and Facebook also created React. So create React app is a great way to get spun up on like the latest features of React. It has not the latest version, not the bleeding edge, but the leading edge of what is currently involved in React today. So you can get caught up in what the latest version is with npm install-g create React app. You don't need to do that every time you spin up an application. this is just one time. So one time you're going to do this, that installs it globally throughout your computer. So I'm not actually going to run that right now. If you do, that'll take a minute to download all of the different pieces of that. And then when you want to create a new application, you can type create React app, and then the name of your application. So this could be my app. This could be your taco food truck. Whatever your application is, that's just the name of your application. So for me, up here you can see a couple of commands ago, I ran create React app, React MPLS. So I've created that as my React app. And what it does, you can see it on my desktop here somewhere. So here on my desktop, it's created a brand new folder. And what we're going to do is we're going to look inside of that folder and see what we have already created for us, what exists inside of that folder. So I'm going to, as it suggests, cd or change directory cd into React MPLS. And I'm going to open that up in Visual Studio Code. If you've got Atom or a different browser that you prefer, go ahead and just open up that folder in whatever your preferred editor is. Did I say browser? Editor. Editor is. So this shows me all of the different things that are a part of the application by default. So by default, I get a Node modules folder. And if you're not totally comfortable with Node, we're not going to dive too deep into it. But this does use Node. That's what NPM is. It's the Node package manager. So we're getting a whole bunch of JavaScript files. That's what React is a whole bunch of JavaScript. So Node modules is a whole bunch of other people's code. That's what Node modules are. They're other people's code that I am going to be using, because I don't want to write 10,000 lines of code tonight, as engaging as that might be, at 2 a.m. this morning. So what I'm going to focus on is this source folder right here. This source folder really has all of the guts of my application. This is where the magic happens. So this is where I'm going to focus when I start to make changes. But right now I'm going to do the second thing it suggests, which is npm start. So I'm going to start my application, npm start. And when I do that, it opens a new tab in Chrome or whatever your default browser, or sometimes not in your default browser, I guess. It just chooses a browser and opens it there. And what I have is the default React app. So I haven't written any code. This is just the default React application. So it's got welcome to React up there. And then it says to get started, edit source app.js and save to reload. So this is using something called Webpack. And Webpack is really cool and really interesting. But again, not a whole ton of time tonight to dive too deep into Webpack. But Webpack has a build process. Webpack has a build process where it's taking my code and creating this website out of it and automatically reloading this page right here. Automatically reloading this every time I hit save. So I don't have to rebuild the project or open it up again through the terminal or npm start or kill a server and restart it. So this is really nice. I can make a change and then see it right away. So inside of here, I can take a look at app.js. And app.js has all of those things we were just seeing. And even if you're not super familiar with JavaScript, yep, thank you. The universal sign for your code's not large enough is this. All right, so this is the app.js. So the app.js, even if you're not familiar with JavaScript, this should still look familiar if you're familiar with the web. This looks a lot like what? HTML, yeah, this looks a lot like HTML. At least maybe not this goofiness up here or the goofiness at the bottom, but this right here looks an awful lot like HTML. There are a couple of differences that I'm going to point out. Here we've got class name instead of class. That's because even though this looks like HTML, this is JSX, JavaScript XML. So this is actually JavaScript under the hood made to look like HTML. And so it's easier to pick up, but the problem is we can't say class anymore because class is already taken in JavaScript. That already means something, and I'm already using it up here. And we're not going to dive into classes or extending classes or parent classes or a whole bunch of other cool stuff because we're going to focus on just creating those components. So here we have classes, and those add style. So here our header has this app header, and that's probably what's giving us this black background. And thanks to Webpack, we're able to bring that in with this app.css. So there are some Webpack things going on here. There are some ES6 things going on here. And there are some React things going on here. And I think that brings a lot of intimidation to people as they're beginning to play with React and mess around with it, is trying to find that line, like what's a Webpack thing, what's an ES6 thing, what's a React thing, and breaking that down. So these couple of lines, these imports, bringing things from other files into our current file, that's a Webpack thing. So if you've ever added a script tag in your HTML, this is taking the place of that. So rather than having 400 script tags inside of your index.html and taking forever to load up on that first view of your page, this is taking care of that. Rather than needing to add it every single time to your index.html, you're going to have this nice clean setup here where it's just an import statement just right where you need it. So this is, again, a Webpack thing, and I want to touch on that really quickly. This import is just a Webpack thing. So if React is scary to you, let's remove that part of it. So that is not a React thing. That's a Webpack thing. And that allows us to bring our CSS in this way. Now, what I said we were going to focus on is the components. So components is the idea that we can take what we have, that HTML-looking JSX, and turn it into smaller and smaller pieces so that it's more and more manageable. You can have a whole bunch of people on a project working on different files without stepping on each other's toes. So these are components. And if you've played around with the new Angular, I guess it's just Angular, but if you played around with Angular 2+, we've got components. And that idea of components is also a part of React. So before we dive too much into those components, that was a tease, I'm sorry. So before we dive too much into components, I do want to show one more thing. For those who are fans of jQuery, do they still exist? Yes? No? Yeah! All right, there we go. We've got animations and sliders. The world is alive. All right, so here, what I want to show is something to make you feel a little bit more comfortable. Here we've got our index.html, and that's in our public folder. And we don't actually touch our public folder all that much when we're developing in React. This is kind of a shell, a place for us to put our application. And what we're going to focus on is this line right down here, this div ID equals root. That's what we're paying attention to, is this div ID equals root. Because what's going to happen is we're going to target that ID like we would in jQuery. We're going to target that ID, and we're going to replace it with our React application. So we're targeting that ID. We're going to find it and replace it with our application. And that's happening here in index.js. So in index.js, we have React. And React up at the top is what allows us to write JSX. Because this, by default, is not what HTML looks like. That is not what HTML looks like, but it allows us to write that. That's JSX. And we can write it because we've brought React into our project. Again, don't let the imports scare you. We're just bringing React into our project so that we can write some JSX. React DOM, that next line, is something we're only going to use in this one file for the most part. It's the one file where we're saying, look at our index.html, replace this ID of root, find that thing, and replace it with this. And this is our component app. This is our app component. And that's where everything for our application is right now. We've also got some service workers. We're not going to talk about those. We'll delete them and pretend they're not there. Yep. Is the laughter from pain of having dealt with that? Or like you tried to refresh and the cache was still there? Yeah. OK, so we're going to delete that for now. So what we're really focused on is this line right here, this React DOM render. And we're bringing in a component. And that component is just JSX. It's all of that HTML-looking stuff that we had before. But if we wanted, we could get fancy. And I'm pretty sure this still works. We'll see. What could go wrong doing it live? All right, so here I'm going to create a new div, a brand new div. And we'll say, hello, world. Oh, OK. I knew it would work. I knew it would work the whole time. So what this really is doing is just very similar to jQuery for now, right? It takes what we have right here, written in what looks very much like HTML, but is actually JSX. But this right here is going to replace whatever that root ID is. So it finds that root ID in index.html, and it replaces it with hello world. You could add a whole bunch of stuff in here. You could have your entire application right in this one line of code right here. The other developers on your team won't like you, but you can do that. It's an option. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to bring in app. And this is a component, app. And now that brings us right back to where we started. So app is import. And this brings in somebody else's code. Somebody else wrote a node module called React, a very nice node module called React. And we're bringing that into our project so that we can write JSX. The second line, React DOM, is so that we can take their index.html, our index.html, and replace it with whatever JSX we want, and just put that in that spot wherever that ID is. This next one adds some style to our project. We could take that or leave it, but it's adding that black background and a few other nice things. And then we're importing that component. So this is really the majority. It's really all of our app right now is this app component. So let's take a look back at that app.js. And this is our component. And we can see what it's rendering, this render method right here, is what we're actually going to put on the DOM. That's what's going to get returned. What we return here is what is going to display on the DOM. We can do other things. Yes, there are lifecycle hooks. We're not going to get to those tonight. But we can put things on the DOM that we have right here. So this is a component. This is our first component, app.js. And we're taking this HTML. And you can think of taking that HTML, which is actually not HTML. It's what? Yes, OK, great. I've said that way too many times, I can tell. Perfect. So here we've got our JSX that's being taken out of here and replaces this app component. So that is what is happening there under the hood. So it's basically HTML. If you're comfortable with HTML, welcome to JSX. You already know half of it. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try and clean up this file a little bit more. So we're going to create additional components. So we get to this file, and we say there is way too much going on. I want to simplify this. I want to take that header, and I want to move it to a separate component. So you can have components that are children of components that are children of components, and so on and so on and so on. And what we're going to do is we're going to take this component, and we're going to move it. So here I'm going to create a brand new file, a brand new component. And this new file is going to be called, because, yeah, did somebody say header? Wow, all right, I love it, yes. All right, you've seen this before, yes? OK, so here I'm going to take header, all of this content right here, everything that's in the header, and I'm going to take it and move it. And to be clear, before I run this, this is still working. So I'm going to take header, I'm going to cut it out, and I'm going to move it. Ooh, I'm not going to do it like that. That's going to make way more work for myself. So I, like the majority of you, willing to admit it or not, am not a developer that enjoys working more than I have to. So I am going to select all of this and use a developer's favorite tool, copy, and go to header.js and paste that. So now I have a brand new component, and I have this component called header.js. Now, I'm not using that anywhere. So just like we brought app into index.js, we need to bring header into our app.js. So we need to bring that into our app.js. We're going to do that with an import. So import just takes code from somewhere else in our project and brings it into the file that we're currently working in. So we're going to call this header. We're going to bring that in from where it is currently located, which is this file. That's what the dot means, is this file, this current repository, this current folder. And we're saying from that folder, from that directory, we're going to go to header. That's the file we want to bring in. So we're bringing in header. So whatever is exported here, whatever is exported default here, which happens to be this app, which is a component, is going to be brought in here. Now, right now, they're exactly identical. So this will have some interesting behavior. So right here, when I open the terminal, it says header is defined but never used. So I'm bringing header into my app.js, but I'm never actually using it. I never use it like it's a component. So here in index.js, when I wanted to use my app component, I used this syntax right here. And if you're familiar with HTML, this is just like an input or an image. It's a self-closing tag. So it's a tag where it doesn't need an opening and a closing. It's a self-closing tag. It does it all at once. So here I'm going to say, I'm going to bring in that app. And if you're a React developer, please cringe silently. So I'm going to bring header into my application. And I'm going to take a look at this. Oh, no! So here I've got, no, not convincing. There were 0 gasps. All right, so here I've got header, and I'm bringing that in. And what it says is adjacent JSX elements must be wrapped in an enclosing tag. So what that means is these two, this header and this div, they're siblings. They're sitting right next to each other, and that's not allowed. You can't do that in JSX. There has to be one parent. So rather than having the header sit out here, I'm going to bring it inside of the div. Bring it inside of the div, like this. So now that error will go away, and such as the development process, I will get a new one. Nope, this will work right away? OK, fine. So what we're going to have is we have our header.js, which is right here. This is our header component. And then we have app.js, which is down here. So because header.js is the entire app, we're getting the entire application 2 times. We're bringing that in. It's a component in header.js. So what we want to do now is we want to remove all of the stuff that isn't actually the header.js. We want to remove all of that excess stuff. So we're going to delete it, delete the div, and just be left with the header. So now we've just got the header, and let's check out how that looks. So we've got welcome to React, and then we've got welcome to React one more time. So we've only got the header inside of header.js, but we have the header still here inside of our app. So what I'm going to do is delete that. And now I've got my header, and I've got my body, this one paragraph right here with app intro. So this really cleaned up that top line of code, right? Now instead of 4 lines of code, we just have header. And this makes app.js more readable. The one warning I'm getting here is logo is defined, but never used. No unused variables. So we shouldn't have variables in our code that we're not going to use. So here we have logo, and our logo is being brought into this app file, but it's never being used. It's never being used inside of this app file, so we're going to delete it here. It's being used inside of header.js. That's where it's being used. So here, sourcing it in is what's going to take care of putting that logo onto the DOM, onto our view. So here we have welcome to React. And we've taken care of moving that. So now that we've cleaned it up, this becomes addictive at some point when you're in React and you're like, oh, I can make so many components, and I can make components out of components, and you just get into this groove. So we're going to do that one more time. So we're going to call this next one introduction paragraph. Introduction paragraph. And I'm going to make a brand new component with that name. So here I'm going to create a new file called introduction paragraph.js. Yes, my files have long names. I'm OK with that. And here I'm not going to bring in header anymore. I don't need to use header inside of this introduction paragraph. All this is going to return is this paragraph. Just the paragraph. And then in app.js, I need to bring that in. So I'm going to import introduction paragraph from introduction paragraph. And now when I go back to the code, I see welcome to React. So that's the header. And then I see that introduction paragraph 2 times. We've played this game before, right? So here we've got the introduction paragraph, which is successfully working. We've brought that into our code, and we still have this paragraph sitting down here, so we can remove that. So what the components allow us to do is take what might be 12, 13, or hundreds of lines of code and condense them into really short, readable files. which is a really nice thing that we can do in React. So we have really short, readable files with names that make sense. So we've got our header and then our introduction paragraph. Cool. Before I move on, does anybody have any questions about this, what we've done so far? Yes. Yeah, so this is a terrible convention, right? So this is not something we should do. This is a great thing to point out. So here I've called this app in every single one of my files. Every single one of my components is named app. Now, what's interesting is whatever I export here, regardless of what it's named, it will be brought in as whatever was exported. So I could call this header, or I could call it taco, or potato, or whatever I want, taco, and this would still work. But this is not good naming, right? I won't make a whole lot of developer friends. So here I'm going to change this back to header. And in this file, you're right. I shouldn't be calling every single one of these app. I should probably give this one a better name. So this will be introduction paragraph. I'm just worried about typos. There we go. Oh, nope. There we go. And header, we'll call header. Header.
Try not exporting by default. Try just exporting by your name.
I don't want to go into deconstructing and all that fun stuff. It's fun. Don't get me wrong. Some other time, but not right now. I want to keep this. I want to keep this entry level, and I don't want to trip people up with destructuring. If you would like on your own app, if you're following along, feel free to get rid of the word default and see what happens. It won't work. But that's what we're doing here. So now we've exported something that makes a little bit more sense. We've got a header called header, and we've got introduction paragraph called introduction paragraph. Cool. Good question. I like where that led us. So the question is, when I bring in a new package, do I use Npm or Yarn? I use Npm. I haven't done a whole lot of research on Yarn. From what I've seen, it's pretty awesome, so I don't have anything against it. I just use Npm, and it hasn't been a problem. My understanding is Yarn might install things a little bit faster because it's doing things concurrently and multi-threading. That might be correct, or I'm just lying. Nobody's giving me any visual cues to tell me, but I know some of you know the answer. OK, thank you for all of your help. So I use Npm. I don't have any issue with Yarn. I think that's fine. If that's what you're using, that's great. Awesome. So that's really cool. I didn't know this. So I have no idea if this is a lie, but trusting the man in the green shirt, we'll say that Yarn caches the packages, which means that they're going to stay on your computer, which means your download time will probably be less. Yes? Cool. Probably true. That's what I aim for. I don't know. Like, this is changing all the time, so I'm just doing my best. Questions? I'm too intimidating. I get that a lot. Yeah. All right. We've got 10 more minutes. So I've got a few other things I'm interested in doing. I don't have a lot of time to do any. Well, I guess I've got 20 more minutes. But I wanted to leave time at the end for questions. But if nobody has questions, then I guess we'll be OK. So are people more interested in seeing maybe another component? Or would you like to deploy this? Or would you like to play a game that I made in React? So well, we're not going to do the game right now. We'll do the game later. OK. Deploy. All right. So it's between the new component and then deploy. So new component. Who wants to see a new component? OK, we are done with components. Oh, OK, we've got two. Deploy. All right. Let's do both. OK. I believe. You got to believe. All right. So here we're going to do both. Your votes don't matter. All right. So here we go. We're going to create one more new component from scratch. Rather than using somebody else's code, we are going to do this from scratch. So the things that we need, we're going to create a new file called, why did I do this? No, let's give it a real name, React MPLS.js. Too short. Yeah, no, good point. Minneapolis. Minnesota. But then where does the comma go? So React Minneapolis.js, and we are going to import. So the first thing, if you looked at the other components, what did this need to import? React. We need to import React so that we can use not HTML, but JSX. All right, fantastic. So we're bringing that in from React. What did I do wrong? It's a lowercase r for React. Okay, and I'm also going to bring in component. Maybe I'll just do it as a, I'll do this one as a different version. So I will say class. Yes, component is something else I would have brought in. I think that's a good idea, but I want to show it a slightly different way in this version. So I'm going to call this React Minneapolis. I could give it whatever name I wanted as long as I exported that thing as well. So we're going to extends React.component. So the component that we've been using is just a part of React, and that's what you were getting at earlier with your question about destructuring. I think that's really cool, but we're not going to use that tonight. Well, we are going to use it, but we're not going to have time to talk about it. So we've got React component, and then what we are going to do is render. That render method is what says this is the thing that I want you to display on the DOM. We can't call that whatever we want. That has to be render, and we're going to return some JSX, and this will be a div called React is great. And we'll close that div. So this is a really simple component right here, and we will export default React Minneapolis, that component. React Minneapolis. And if we check right now, this is not a part of our application. The only component that's really a part of our application is app.js, and that brings all of the other components in. So if we want to use this component, we have to bring it in app.js. Or we could bring it in a child component, but for now, we'll say we have to bring it in app.js. So we're going to import our React Minneapolis from that file. And that'll go down here, React Minneapolis. And there we go. We've created our own custom component. From scratch, we've created our own custom component. Plenty of time. OK. So that's our own custom component. And now, because we have our own custom component, and this is such a terrific app, we need to get this to the web. It has to be online. It's so beautiful. So I'm going to use a tool called Firebase in order to do this. You can deploy in whatever way you'd like. What I will show is I'm going to kill my server, and I'm going to say Npm Run Build. And what this does is it creates an optimized version or a production version. It takes all of your code and condenses it to essentially two files, an index.html and a JavaScript file. No, that's not entirely true, but it's true enough. So we've got a JavaScript file and an HTML file. And then we can, we've got that file created and built here inside of our build folder. And again, this can be kind of confusing, but this is not a React thing. Does anybody know what this is? What kind of thing? It's not an ES6 thing necessarily. It's a Webpack thing. This is a Webpack thing. So a Webpack thing allows us to build this project. And in here, we've got a whole bunch of files, I guess more than just two. But the ones I care about are this index.html and then the JavaScript file here in static. So these ones, these production versions. So what this is a static folder. So if we go in here and we open our index, or we serve this file, this is just serving it locally. But we can see it at localhost 5000. So this is just serving static files. So all we need to do is serve static files. So if your preference is to serve static files on GitHub, you can totally do that. I'm going to go ahead and do it with Firebase. So I'm going to go to firebase.com. And I'm going to go to my console and create a new project. I definitely didn't test run this earlier. I'm just doing it live. So here we've got React MPLS is the name of my project. And I'll go ahead and create that project. And now just like I might git init, for Firebase, I'm going to Firebase init. So this isn't, if I do it at the right, I got to make it smaller. This is the most important part of the talk. If you come away with nothing else, ASCII art. Oh, no, come on, come on. Well, in theory, that says Firebase, but now it just says Flames. Good. Oh, I am inside the project folder. I'm not inside the build folder. So I created the build folder from here with Npm Run Build, but I'm not inside of the build folder. And now Firebase is a Google tool that allows you to do a whole bunch of different things. You can use a Firebase database, Firebase Firestore, functions, hosting, or storage. Tonight, the one I care about is hosting. I'm going to use hosting in order to deploy my app. So I hit space on that, and now I need to select one. Yes, I have a problem and an addiction with creating too many of these. Maybe I can find it. There we go. So then it will ask, what do I want to use as my public directory? I just created it. It's not my public folder. Does anybody know what it is? Build, that's right. So my build folder. And yes, I'll make this a single page application. And build.index.html already exists. I don't think I want to overwrite that. I'm going to say no. And now I'm going to Firebase deploy. And like any good developer, I cross my fingers and hope really hard. And it says it's hosting at this URL. And there we go. We are deployed. We have our React application live on the web. A couple people were very happy about that. OK, cool. So that gets our React application on the web. And we've still got 11 minutes left. This is terrific. Yeah, questions?
So I've always not been a novice and just screwing around. I've deployed without doing a build and a bunch of React apps. What's the static file from this build folder? It's not like a server.
Yeah, so the question is, what is the difference between just deploying your React application in development mode, which is where we were a second ago before we did Npm Run Build, and this version right here. And the difference is that this is going to be bundled, and it's going to be a smaller application. So this will take less time for the people visiting your site to load up. It will still technically work either way. Also, if you have the React tools, up here I've got the React tools, and this tells me, not that one, this one. So here I've got the React tools, and this tells me that it's a production build of React, which is a faster, lighter weight version of React. It's worse for development because it's minimized and concatenated, so you really can't read it and figure out what's going on if you need to be debugging. But it's really great for loading quickly. So that's the advantage of using Npm Run Build. Yes, so if you make changes in your development and you run Npm Run Build again, it will overrun your build folder, but that won't automatically deploy. You'll still have to run Firebase deploy or whatever you're doing to deploy. Yeah? No, so Firebase doesn't automatically, I don't know if you're talking about gzipping. I believe the answer is no. I believe what's making the files smaller, it could be a couple of things. Firebase could be gzipping them for you. I don't believe they are. Somebody could correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, so gulp is not necessarily a Firebase competitor. It's gulp versus Webpack. So Webpack is the thing that's Npm Run Build. That's what's doing that. Good question. Yeah?
Is there a reason you didn't use stateless functional components for React
So the question is there a reason I did not use stateless functional components for my React app? No. It's simpler to do it this way when I'm showing it the first time, but we could convert them to stateless functional components maybe in a minute or two. Oh, there was a question, but now people really want to see stateless components. Yeah?
Why do you prefer Firebase over Heroku?
So the question is, why do I prefer Firebase over Heroku? And I think that is not a fair choice. That's a false choice. I love them both for different reasons. So one thing that I like about Firebase for deployment is I never have to wait 30 seconds. And you don't have to do that if you deploy to Heroku and pay the $7 a month, but I am cheap, so I'm not going to do that. So this is a way that I'll never have to wait that 30 seconds, but I'm not running a server here. This is just, well, technically, sure, but this is just serving static files. So if I want to do something that's not just serving static files, I do still use Heroku or AWS or something like that. Yeah? Yeah. Absolutely. So there are ways to create a production build and still be able to debug it if you use the map files. So that's a good idea to do. I just didn't dive into that tonight. Definitely a good thing to point out. Yeah?
Show us something with data.
Okay. All right. I love the question. So show us something with data. We demand more. All right. So here what we're going to do is let's go ahead and create something. What do you want? You want a string? You want an array? You want an object? I can do it all. A cute blog post? Now I got to write an entire blog post? All right. Const blog post. Blog post equals, what are we going to have, a title? What? Taco blog, yes. We'll broaden this. This is going to be food. Oh, this. So it's for my food truck blog. This is specifically talking about Purple People Feeder. Purple People Feeder. They do not have tacos, but the blog is, they have the Behemoth Burger. Behemoth Burger. All right, yes, there's a typo. OK, thank you. They have a Behemoth Burger. Heckling is bad in my students right now. This is fantastic. I feel right at home, right at home. They have a Behemoth Burger. No need to say more, period. OK, and did I close that object? Yes. Semicolon for good luck, also because it's an assignment. And then we've got React is great, and we're going to go ahead and put our blog post onto the DOM as well. So here we've got our div. We've got our div, and we're going to go ahead and say h1 is, and so if you're familiar with AngularJS, you know that you need 2 curlies in order to get something on the DOM. React went a completely different direction, 1 curly. So here we've got h1, and we've got 1 curly here. We're going to say blog post. We're going to put that on the DOM. I don't typically do this without state, so I'm pretty sure this will work. We'll find out. Do we have wagers? Yes?
Testing.
No?
Yes.
All right, no. OK. All right, good. We got a lot of believers. All right. Oh, no. Oh, thank you. There we go. There's my friend. OK, so we've got this error that says objects are not valid as a React child. So in AngularJS, you can just throw things onto the DOM. That is not the case here in React. We need .title. So we need a string. We can put strings onto the DOM. We can't put objects onto the DOM. And there we go. We've got Purple People Feeder, and then we'll give it a paragraph. And that'll be blog post.blog. And there we go. So we've got our blog up and running. Of course, we want to deploy that. So we're going to npm run build. So npm run build is taking those files, it's turning them into those minimized versions of those files. And now we are going to use Firebase deploy. And I'm going to worry very much about caching right now. So let me instead do this in an incognito window. And there we go. We've deployed again. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, just to clarify, I was thanking him and not like sarcastically being like, thank you for the applause before you applauded. That'd be very rude. Perfect timing. All right. Do you want to see my game? Yeah. All right. So this is built in React and Redux and has no security and is deployed to Firebase. So if you can hack it, good for you. You'll win. So here I'm going to go to derby-day.firebaseapp.com. Ooh, I should do my closing remarks. No, we'll do the game first. All right. So derby-day.firebaseapp.com. And you can log in with Google. This is the first thing I made in React, so judge harshly. And you can go ahead and log in. Use your own user credentials and not mine. This is using React. This is Google OAuth in React. Oh, somebody started the game already. All right, so start game actually runs the race. All right, so if you are on one of the few phones that actually has access to this because you signed up, the whip button in the middle will make your horse go faster, but keep an eye on the bar on the left-hand side. Nobody's following this because I don't have it up. OK, so here's, OK, all right, fine. Yeah. All right, so it takes 2 minutes, and then we'll get to it. The last horse has to finish first, and then there we go. All right, so Nathan won. So give it a second. Don't hit start game yet. Let other people participate. But what this is doing is this is a React application that also uses Firebase as the database. Come on. Yeah, so the security settings are about what you can see here. So this is using React and Firebase to communicate between each other. So what's happening is every time someone's whipping their horse on their phone, it's updating the Firebase database, which is updating my screen right here, getting that information, and then calculating where the position of the horse should be. And re-rendering the DOM is an important thing to say when all we talked about was render. Yes. All right, give it a second, people. Let 10 people join. No, OK, I think we did get 10, because when it gets to 10, it automatically starts the race. So I think we've got, ooh, this is going to be a close. This is the first time 10 people have simultaneously played this game. So it hasn't crashed yet, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. We'll see if this actually pans out. So much pressure. It's lagging. All right, well done, BM, whoever that is. All right, that's enough of that. So here we're going to go back to the PowerPoint. So that is a React application. If you want to dig into the code of that and figure out how to make your horse fly across the screen, feel free. And then, of course, every good talk ends with some unapologetic self-promotion. You can reach out to me at Luke at any of those domains. So I'm Luke at primeacademy.io, Luke at abamat.com, Luke at approachable.io. Approachable.io is an organization I started to help people feel more comfortable coming into software. So if you've never made a pull request to an open source project, go to approachable.io and it will walk you through how to make a pull request to an open source project. I know it can be really intimidating being told like, hey, you should contribute to open source, and then all of the things are like, you need to write unit tests right off the bat, and it's like, okay, but I don't necessarily know how to do that. So this gives you a way to get involved in open source without knowing everything there is to know. So decreasing the barrier to entry there. And then also what I've recently started doing was last week, I made a huge mistake during one of my lectures, and my students told me how much they loved it because that made me look human. So I've also, I don't know what that says about me. So what I've started doing is recording myself just actually doing development, because actual development is way more painful than what I've done tonight. It's easy to do things you've done 100 times. It's harder to do things you're doing for the first time. So you can watch those videos for either Solidarity or Schadenfreude. It's up to you. So that's just me struggling through code. And if you are a more experienced developer, or even if you're just getting into it and you'd like to share your own struggles, please reach out to me. I'd love to put your own experiences with code up there as well if you'd like to record yourself doing software development as well. I think it's time for us to be like honest about what it actually takes to be a developer rather than seeing all of these like perfectly fashioned tutorials all the time. And then that's me on Twitter. I'm at Luke Schlangen. Good luck spelling my last name, but it's written up there, so take a picture. Thanks.